It's a day for stellar matches here at the Heroes Global Championship. We already had two fantastic ones in Europe, and now get pumped because we've got Gale Esports and Team Freedom coming up very soon. Dread, we have been talking about this match all week long. And
finally, we are going to be able to get it here. Some of the best teams in North America, a lot of impact when looking more, not only just at our standings, but when it comes to the playoff situations, who are going to be the North American representatives at the HGC Finals that is going to be held at BlizzCon.
Well, there's kind of been a theme to a lot of the matches this weekend, and as we look at the standings, that theme has kind of been that our top 4 teams have been improving, but they still are dealing with their demons. Roll20, we heard Goku talk about their aggression. They finally lost a game in this part. Gale Esports, either hubris, not to show any strategies, or maybe just underestimation of Space Station Gaming. And then Team Freedom and Tempo Storm are still trying to right the ship that kind of ran aground after the Western Clash.
And it's who can embrace those demons and overcome them the fastest that we are looking at the top half of these standings. We still have a bit of the teams like Even in Death and Lag4 struggling down there. And as we know, Even in Death most likely going to the Crucible, but Lag4 and Superstars, it is still up for debate. And conveniently, Superstars are going to be fighting for that here today.
Yeah, they will still be hoping that they can get some games off of Tempo Storm. Now that Lag4 has taken 2 games off of Tempo Storm, Lag4 very close to defeating Tempo, and getting those 2 game wins allowed them to overtake Superstars. And it's up to Superstars now to get some game wins of their own, especially since they know that Even in Death and Lag4 have yet to play.
I couldn't tell if that was a statement or you were throwing that to me. I'll be honest at first.
Sorry about that.
I was trying to be, yeah, that is in fact a true statement here.
Yeah.
There's a lot in line for every team that is going to be battling today. I think everybody but Tempo Storm. You know, Tempo has a kind of, I don't want to say easy ride because let's be real here, there have been kind of questions of power coming out from them, and Superstars has been a slow and steady decline that they are trying to kind of bounce back from. But this series beforehand, again, we talked about the things that they have to be looking for, but I'm mainly excited for Superstars today. I know it seems weird. I want to just see, do they end up getting that kind of change that we've been looking for so very long? Saray was back last week. Maybe this week is going to look a brand new Superstars, you know?
Yeah, I'm excited to see them too, and that'll be the second match on the docket as we look at today's schedule. In case you missed Europe, Team Liquid kept playing Ducks from supplanting them and taking them down to the Crucible level. Meanwhile, Fnatic, they've claimed another 3-0 victory. They've been able to take out Team Expert, and Expert now at 6-6, so still trying to climb the standings and get in a good spot for playoffs in Europe. We'll close out today with Superstars versus Tempo Storm, but first, the highlight match of the weekend for North America, Gale Esports versus Team Freedom. It's the battle of the melees between Cure and Michael Udall, and it should be a fantastic match. I'm really hoping we get all 5 games, but who knows what's going to happen. Freedom looked great versus Superstars, obviously. Gale Force lost 3-0 to Space Station. Anything could happen here.
Anything absolutely could happen. I mean, there's about every result that you could tell me here today, I would just be like, you know, I'm not surprised to see that outcome come over. There has been way too much mix-up at the top half of the North American standings to the point where I have no idea what we're going to see unfold here. I hope that it's going to be a very close competitive one here. I hope that we see that kind of level of play. I feel like if anybody's got something to prove, it's Gale Force more than that of Team Freedom due to that upset against Space Station Gaming. That was for being, you know, being prophesized as the super team of North America and slowly kind of almost fulfilling that. That was too big of a road bump. That is not a road bump. It is a huge stopping point for this squad that they have somehow got to be able to wrestle and move past.
Wrestle it and move past it. We'll see if they can do that. Let's get into the match and hear from both of the teams about this week.
I think our series against Team Freedom will be a very fun series for both teams. I'm very excited every time I get to play against them. I think they're a really new up-and-coming team in NA, and I really like their style. They're able to execute compositions that other teams aren't. They're not afraid to pick heroes like D.Va and, you know, pick a little out of meta. I really respect their team. I think, though, on this patch, we have an advantage both in macro and in draft. So I think that's where you're going to see us come ahead in the series, is making some strong rotations and getting some drafts that we know they don't know about. I am confident. I think we're going to take a victory, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 5 games.
So in Phase 2 Part 1, we're the only team that managed to take GFE down, and so we're trying really hard right now to make that happen again. We feel actually pretty confident going into that series. Our draft have been evolving a lot. Cure have been drafting now for our team with the help of Nasmus. And hopefully those drafting changes gonna make us way better and take down GFE again.
Nasmus, any words for Gale Force?
The pain train's coming, man. Choo choo.
Nice. The pain train is here. It is pulled into the station. It's up to Gale Force to try to send it on its way or push it back. One of the two, whatever allows Gale Force to win this series. A lot of confidence, honestly, from both of our teams, Dredd.
A lot of confidence from both sides here. And that's, you know, what you should be flaunting when you're at the top of the standings in North America. I am so satisfied that we see that from both the teams, which means we're going to get them at their best, seeing the top of North America performing at its top level. And the big thing I want to point out, you and I were talking about before we got into this series, is that there's kind of a unique phenomenon existing between these two specifically at those top four. When every version of them have played, we often have teams have an overlapping map. If me and Gilly are rivals at the top half of North America, you know, one or two of them we both are not minding to land on, except for these two. It's about a clear just line drawn where half of them go to Gale Force Esports, the other fall over to Team Freedom. We'll be getting into it when we get to the bans and everything else later on, but it is suddenly a lot more kind of clear on who gains an advantage before the draft even starts. So this is maybe a different version of kind of those top-end matches that we have ever experienced here at HGC.
Maybe a lot more losers' choices of second pick so they can make sure and choose the battleground. We'll have to see. Drafting soon, but first let's take a look at the cheers. Starting with Team Gale Force Esports is first. We've got Gladman at the top. Gladman, a fan of a lot of teams, but definitely showing up here for Gale Force Esports.
Don't get mad.
Get glad.
Man. Everybody's wishing they had a Gladman at this point, let's be honest here. And as always, pretty darn savvy. Repping it here for the members of Team Freedom.
Uh-oh, Gladman also cheering for Team Freedom. This is going to be a rough one for him.
Yeah,
also, Joe's space.
He feels like, you know, he's honestly kind of just leaving his mark everywhere here. Gladman is establishing dominance on the cheers territory, and really, it's kind of unrivaled right now.
It is. If you look at the top cheers, Gladman is clearly in the lead globally of all people cheering, but keep cheering your bits. Get excited, support these teams. They're going to need it for this match. It has a lot of implications when we talk about HGC finals at BlizzCon. Let's take a look at some of the tweets that you guys have been talking about, our players have been talking about for this match. Starting with Fan from Gale Force Esports playing versus Team Freedom in HGC right now. Come cheer for us. Very important match for both teams. So important for Gale Force, extra important since they lost to Space Station on Friday.
Yeah, it suddenly, this match was kind of like uber impactful for the members of Gale Force Esports, but then it got really big deal after the upset versus Space Station Gaming that they experienced earlier through this week. But on the other side of the table, we've got the Melee Cure for the members of Team Freedom. We play versus Gale Force Esports and HGC in about 20 minutes. A really important match to qualify for BlizzCon. Come cheer for your boy.
Your boy Cure wanting your cheers.
He wants your cheers.
Cure is, we were talking, or I was talking right before this, the Melee, the Side Soaker, and I'm very excited for that matchup between Michael Udall and Cure specifically. Both of them getting into the Melee role in their own way. Michael Udall was from Dorm. Cure originated in Dorm too, but played more of a ranged assassin role, but busted it out on the Zeratul. I'm very excited to see how that side laning goes. I'll be keeping my eye on that lane for sure.
And the big one for me, no surprise here, it's got to be Collusion and Akaface. The
Oh,
supports representing here for the top teams of NA. The young blood of Collusion making the transfer over to the support role and making a pretty big name for himself. A little bit different support priority than you normally expect, and I feel like that's because of his youth. But you have kind of the opposite effect when looking at Akaface. The experience he's displayed in the support role has him going toward those tier 3 supports, but his strength on them, like the Morales, kind of stands out, and suddenly you get weirder picks from him in that direction. So who is going to be the best? We are yet to find out, but the biggest thing is we will find out.
We will, and we'll find out what Battleground Game 1 is on right now. Gale Force Esports, of course, takes us to Brax's Holdout. We've got bans on Battlefield of Eternity and Sky Temple. Gale Force has been flexing out their ban a lot more since feeling more comfortable on Dragonshire. They changed that up. First time versus Tempo Storm earlier in this part, but Battlefield of Eternity, generally a ban for Team Freedom, and that does take away one of those favored battlegrounds for Gale Force.
And the Sky Temple is the #1 priority that Team Freedom has been displaying, so a lot of research going into this series. Game 1, huge advantage over to Gale Force Esports, knowing it is home turf, Brax's Holdout.
But that does put some extra pressure on them to make sure that they do win it. And if I remember correctly, the last time these two faced off on Battlefield of Braxis, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Freedom did win there. Freedom brought out their Tassadar Dahaka top lane strategy and were able to defeat Gale Force Esports. Let's see if it happens again. Team Freedom banning Tassadar.
Tassadar is going to be the first removal. Medivh is not a hero that's seen too much play on Braxis Holdout. You heard us talking yesterday about when we saw the ban priority on a map like Sky. That was a little bit weird. Braxis Holdout is probably the least probable map to see him picked up other than that shrine control strategy that is so niche. I honestly don't even know if I've ever seen it unfold competitively. Only whispers of it and kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, I feel like it was more a niche strategy that initially people got really excited about, and then afterward people realized that there's other ways to do what you're trying to do to backdoor those shrines, and Genji is a great hero for that. Muradin is another one that we may see Gale Force Esports pick up right here, but it's Dahaka that Team Freedom gets first, so still liking Dahaka on Braxis Holdout for the global.
But we talked about all yesterday, mainly I did, because I do think it's going to be a common trend rising for North America, and this is a perfect case to see if that is true. Gale Force Esports, a team known to run globals, Dahaka's already picked up. Malthael is heavily incentivized. The synergy, more so the anti-synergy. Do they go in either direction? They don't. They go with the ETC and the Grey Main. So Gale Force showing high priority onto ETC, and then the generic DPS of the Grey Main.
That is the highest priority, really, we've seen of ETC yet from Gale Force Esports, and I wanted to talk about the Warriors. Both of these Warrior players have enjoyed Stitches in part 1, but then shifting wildly, deviating to different heroes. We see more Muradin and a Nubarak from King Caffeine from Gale Force, and we see for Team Freedom a lot of ETC priority for Zugrug. Still a little Stitches here and there, but it's mainly shifted over to ETC. Now with ETC being taken by Gale Force Esports, we'll see what Zugrug can do on a Nubarak.
And I think that there is a bit of a reason as to why, you know, the members of Gale Force Esports haven't prioritized that ETC so frequently, or maybe oh so often. And I'm going to be honest, I think that's because King Caffeine personally just has a very polar performance on the hero. He is very deal or no deal type situation. You can expect the 5-man miracle mosh pits, or you can expect the struggling to identify when to properly power slide. At least not so much power slide, but power slide without dying immediately afterwards. So that has got to be a huge focus here, since they're not only making the adjustment, but Team Freedom's a team that is very effective at punishing the Warriors and those front lines.
The strategy that Gale Force was pushed into by Space Station to play on Braxis is gone. It was Dahaka Falstad, and Team Freedom have claimed both of those heroes for their own. But Gale Force still likely has something up their sleeve. It starts with this Chromie ban. There's going to be no Malthael to match up with Dahaka in the top lane.
So already when you see the Chromie banned out by Gale Force Esports, you have to be kind of questioning what's going on here. The Falstad Dahaka leads to a heavy 2-3 laning situation that is very difficult to overcome. Gale Force knows that because they have ran it on a map like Braxis so heavily into the past. The Falstad's already taken. So which direction do they want to go into? Because the Chromie would have been an amazing tool for them defensively into that. So I feel like they're very confident in their laning situation. It's like Gul'dan Morales type deals is what I'm thinking here.
That's what I was thinking too. Gul'dan was something. Probably Morales seems to be still a favored one, or favorite strategy for them. What else could it be? Greymane is likely to be making a lot of rotations as a rotation hero to get mercenary camps, so not necessarily a good hero just to stay in the lane, unless I'm missing something. And Greymane, it's usually more of a mage type hero.
Yeah, you typically is going to be. We're going to find out. We have 4 seconds before Gale Force moves forward. Uther, not a surprise there. Muradin still keeping it vague, but in the double warrior and now concentrating on backdooring those shrines.
So ETC probably is going to be now the top laner. At least that's what we've seen generally from Michael Udall, I would guess, and maybe a stage dive over Mosh Pit.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to assume as well, unless we see a major, wild hair here as the last pick. But for Freedom, talking about last picks, they got themselves Lunara and Rhaegar. Talk about living with the spirit animal here for Team Freedom's composition. 0 humans, very little. All animal base.
What are you talking about with Falstad?
I mean, okay, he's riding a bird.
You're talking about the bird. You're counting Swiftbeak more. It's like a Rexar situation where Misha counts more than Rexar. It's the same thing. I get it now. I get it.
You're right. I went a little far there. I'm just saying that they got a lot going on in the spirit realm, whereas there's a lot of human-based things other than the ETC for Gale Force Esports. Might want to stick with a human here. Get the old clash. Alliance versus Horde.
If only Falstad and Greymane were replaced. If they were swapped, man, we'd have it in the bag. It'd be a perfect strategy.
I feel like Team Freedom has very apparently pushed Gale Force Esports away, and I think a lot of it has to hinge on specifically the 1-2 from Gale Force Esports, that ETC Greymane transition, then into that Falstad and the ban on Malthael. I know I've been talking about it a lot, but I do think it means a lot for these type of drafts if Dahaka is going to be prioritized as high as he is in North America without the Illidan.
I wondered if they were going to go back to a pseudo global of either Valera or Zeratul. Zeratul stronger, and we see him more often now than the Valera. This is something that they've done in the past. This is something that has worked for them in the past. But it does mean that it is going to be Greymane and Uther who are the two holding down the fort in one lane.
They have a lot of kill potential that can sneak up, you know, no pun intended there with the Zeratul locked in, I guess, but that can sneak up on the members of Team Freedom, and they need to be very self-aware over the first Shrine phase, Altar phase, whatever we consider those things. I have a different word, I feel like, every time I talk about Praxis Holdout. But whatever the objective itself is, it's very important that they do not stagger those deaths around mainly the Zeratul Murden duo that is going to kind of be a thorn in the side of the members of Team Freedom.
Now, Team Freedom have the double global composition. What do you think that means for a laning setup? Are we looking at a 2-3?
I would ideally expect a 2-3 scenario. The only concern I have with running a 2-3 is if your optimal Falstad Dahaka isn't going to, because Falstad Dahaka is going to be split pushing.
Yeah.
What's the counter to Falstad? Zeratul, that's on the other side.
Right.
So this is, Falstad doesn't have enough tools with the Dahaka there to be okay on his own. Falstad will still die to the unless the drag lands, but you should never expect the land to go, or the drag to land on top of the Zeratul. He has 2 teleports by that point. He'll be fine. So it's got to be a healer who goes with the Falstad most of the time to keep him up. And that's kind of what I expect with the laning situation. So still a 2-3, but it's going to be different than normal out of fear of the Zeratul and the Murden roam and the lethal it provides to the Falstad.
Yeah, Gale Force ran this double global with a global in each lane and then a 3-man rotation that just went back and forth looking for picks. But it does seem like that would leave Falstad way too vulnerable to this possible Zeratul, even a Zeratul and Murden together.
I mean, yeah, I would. There's no point in this game where I'd leave. If I'm Team Freedom, I look at my Falstad player and I say, if you do not have the buddy system going on, then we are doing something wrong because you are the prime kill target. You and Lennar are going to be the focus all game, mixed with the Rhaegar on the back lines. They need to make sure that a frontliner is always with them. Falstad's there with the Gust to get the peel. It's going to be scary for the first couple of minutes, but if they hold off that, they get post-10, I feel like Team Freedom's got a far better team fight. They very much forced the hand of Gale Force Esports, and I don't know if their response with the Zeratul felt like it had the punch that they were looking for.
Well, I cannot wait any longer to get into game number 1 between Gale Force and Team Freedom, so let's get to it. Praxis Holdout, Gale Force Esports, home turf for game 1.
And here they are in the blue. Mike Udall will be playing the ETC. We have Fan going on to the Zeratul. We have King Caffeine playing Murden. It's going to be K1 Pro on the Greymane. And last, you know it's going to be Akaface representing on Uther. That's Gale Force Esports.
Meanwhile, over on the right-hand side of the battleground in red, Collusion playing Rhaegar, Zugrug playing Anubarak. Up next, Dahaka played by Cure. We'll have Falstad played by Dansky, and finally Nasmus will be playing Lunara. This is Team Freedom.
Team Freedom with a lot of squishies on their side, but they have a lot of tools to be able to deal with the Zeratul. It's just very important that Fan cannot shark away onto the sides B, making Freedom second-guess their positioning constantly throughout this game. And so this is the man to keep your eye on for Gale Force Esports.
You know, Dread, up until Friday, Team Freedom was the only team who was able to defeat Gale Force in all of Phase 2. Space Station changed that by beating them on Friday, but even still, Gale Force has to be fearful of Team Freedom. And in that series between the two, Gale Force almost refused to fight Team Freedom in a lot of the games. Do you expect that we're going to see them be more willing to team fight versus Freedom now? I
have no idea what to expect out of Gale Force. I have a lot more to assume. To be frank, the results of Space Station Gaming versus Gale Force Esports just don't add up to me. Something is missing, and unless they're willing to admit whatever may have gone down in that type of situation or what is happening behind the curtain right now, because it just doesn't. It's not that it was a 3-0 or anything. It's how it happened, how it unfolded, how those drafts went through.
Right.
It seems like the #1 seed that has only shown any signs of mortality versus a team as formidable of Team Freedom would show that kind of performance against Space Station. So I would assume no, because they've displayed passiveness before and that they're going to be more scared, less confident after the results versus Space Station. But let's be real here. Maybe they were trying to fake it. I just don't quite know.
The thing that almost worked for Gale Force the last time these two faced off was to try to out-macro Team Freedom, but Team Freedom is completely different than how they were at that point in time. They went and boot camped in Europe, and they learned a lot about the macro game to add up to their team fighting. They're still stellar at team fighting, but they have added to that a better macro game. So I think we're going to have to see Gale Force Esports be willing to put up a fight against Team Freedom if they have any chance of being able to defeat them.
Yeah, that has been the biggest tool that it seems like the members of Team Freedom did gain from their international experience. And more importantly, it's one of the few teams that seem to directly show a benefit gained from their time abroad. But on Braxis here, the trade for the forts are real, a common strategy to see unfold here. But the members of Team Freedom far ahead of that of Gale Force Esports. Gale Force will be able to confirm this top fort. It's just whether the members of Team Freedom want to try and get a collapse or a flank up in that northern lane.
I know the feeling, Steptula. I do not have any idea who to root for either, but thankfully as a commentator, I don't have to choose. I have to stay unbiased.
I just refuse to believe that to be true. Every single time you say it. I know deep down you've got something there, but we found ourselves a fall stat here. Dansky got the barrel roll, burrow charge coming in.
Fresh Stock's in. King Caffeine very low. Caught by Kier with the drag for first blood.
First blood over to Gale, or over to Team Freedom here, showing the fangs very early on, securing a half-level lead. Zeratul, though, did his job securing that bottom shrine, so no Zerg Rush obtained in this middle ground, but Team Freedom has an early game advantage over Gale Force Esports on Braxis holdout. This already is a great way to be starting this series.
But the thing to remember is to keep an eye on the beacons at all times. Zeratul can sneak his way on there. Michael Udall was even trying to do that. And if nothing else, it pulls Team Freedom off of the structures that they were trying to kill. So it's a double win for Michael Udall. Either he gets the beacon or he stops Team Freedom from sieging. This is slight beacon progress now, 18% for Team Freedom, but importantly that's 18% that normally we see for Gale Force Esports.
Zeratul's still not making the transition up towards top. I'm just wondering, when is Fan going to be the man making that transition? And it doesn't seem like he has any interest yet. He is keeping the Minuet pushed over onto his side as long as he possibly can. And Freedom's throwing around the Wisp, trying to help keep track of him here. But it's not gaining anything. It's just watching Team Freedom slowly win the laning situation for now as Zeratul stuck onto the side lane. Pressure with the Murden, transitioning down bottom, but Team Freedom just mirrors that up on top.
Dahaka now in trouble with King Caffeine and Fan there. But he has Dahaka so he can stay safe. Flight comes in from Dansky in a way to allow Team Freedom to once again take control of this bottom shrine. Does Gale Force push into the top? It looks like they're trying, but Team Freedom with Zagrug there is willing to sit and squat if they can.
Found himself a drag. ETC is the man for dinner, but Rhaegar is going to be the trade-off here for Team Freedom. Fan is next to fall. K1 Pro on retreat. Impale does not connect. Cure's got a secondary drag, might not even need it. Dark Swarm does it all, and they get 3-4-1. Team Freedom is really fighting here.
We knew that they liked a team fight, and they are making a statement of why they like it. 3 kills, 4-1. As we look at this, a half-level lead in experience, and importantly, they've been able to keep a hold of both of their forts because of their faster trade in the bottom. Still working on the beacon progress. King Caffeine's toward the bottom. Kier backs off, wanting to make sure he doesn't miss out on the soak, not knowing where Zeratul will be.
With the downtime, Team Freedom did use it to pick up that camp. It's a nice benefit of the Rhaegar. If you guys at home are wondering why is Rhaegar picked up as highly as he is, his wave clear is a huge argument for it. His burst healing is the biggest thing, but
and cleanse.
And still being one of the few with cleanse, but also that little right there, being able to pick up camps on your own. On maps like Braxis Holdout or Dragonshire, those can be very, very useful tools and the things that separate you one level from your opponent. And we know that that can lead to heroics and, more importantly, the game.
Some pretty cool talent adaptations from both sides. For Michael Udall's ETC, we do see Crowd Surfer so that he can be another backdooring hero for a shrine. And he has Echo Pedal. We'll see if that leads toward a stage dive play so we can try to keep up with both the globals. Now we are seeing a Nubarak be the one who is caught. Nubarak also took Shed Exoskeleton, so once he uses his Hardened Carapace, he gets some more movement speed, and that has helped him be more of the focus of Gale Force Esports and make sure that he can maneuver his way either to diving in further to allow his team to get time to get a kill, or to make sure that he's the one who is the final hero to back out.
And Dansky hasn't taken a wild build by any means. Hold up here, 4-man Impale from Zugrug. They're going to move up, posturing around this bottom shrine. Cap goes in, lands a Storm Bolt. Again, Zugrug does have a burrow charge. Dwarf Toss on out. Members of Team Freedom will be able to convert this into their favor, but on bottom, Zeratul is still contesting around the Dahaka, and Dahaka will be able to hold that long enough. Zeratul cannot convert that in the 1v1 in that time frame, so it's all about here on top. Galeforce is trying to get the punishment.
The 4v4 just is not working out for Galeforce Esports, and now Kier comes in along with the Zerg Rush now that it has been picked up. It'll be in the bottom lane. And the rest of Team Freedom in the top. What do they want to do? They're still going to transition down to the bottom along with their Zerg.
Well, Galeforce Esports can't defend this whatsoever. They're going to be losing the 10 so very quickly. They have to take this fight this second. The drag goes on to Mike Udall to knock up the Impale. The Burrow charge, he keeps himself alive. Power slide on out. Van receives pressure from Dansky. K1 Pro's got the disengage. But my goodness, that was the only chance Galeforce had left, and it is absolutely vanished.
And Team Freedom knew that that's the exact way that Galeforce would be rotating down. So Galeforce went in for the fight. Team Freedom were willing to take it, even though they didn't have heroics. And now Freedom have pushed Galeforce all the way back into their base.
And Gilly, now Team Freedom is going to secure these heroics. They're knocking on the keep wall. They're willing to break the base here of Galeforce Esports. How do they defend?
10 would be nice. We have Zeratul up in the top with the rest of the Zerg Rush for Galeforce Esports, at least trying to take out that fort to give them the spike in experience to heroic abilities, but they're not here yet. Freedom take down the keep.
Keep number 1, 8 minutes in, is going to be Team Freedom. And again, gotta highlight the fact that that is against Galeforce on Braxis.
Nice.
Drag lands on the Fan. And he is not going to be a fan of that one. Akaface miles on out. He's going to be wrapped up in a nice little blanket here when he lets out. Does he pop the Divine Shield? If so,
Volstad's here, so is Kier, just to make sure with the drags we can't get to that point at all.
I was going to say that if he did use it, I feel like that would have been a poor play. So I'm almost thankful that the members of Team Freedom were not giving the opportunity.
Freedom with a full level lead now over Galeforce Esports. They'll just rotate up and use whatever chance they get, whatever opportunity they have. Galeforce dealing with the bottom, but they are slowing that down.
We often talk about, when looking at the Lunara, going into Thorwood Vine, we talk about that talent a lot. I do. When we see it, when we don't see it, and when it's right versus whether it's wrong. Into the Uther, we know that Lunara with Thornwood Vine is most optimal, but the question always is, does she have the opportunity to survive? Think about all the amazing tools that Team Freedom has and why it's easier to move into that. They have the Gust, they've got the Ancestral, they've got the Thornwood Vine. Hold up here.
Fan cannot catch a break from Kier and these drags. Forced to use the Void Prison, but they also have the Gust, so Team Freedom allows it for a reset.
Silence.
Gust for a Void Prison trade.
And Fan's completely out of the fight, questioning if he can go back in there. Drag lands onto King Caffeine. Zugrug wants a burrow charge, but not confident he can move up. Nasmus, he's going to go ahead and say, this is green. We are good to go, boys. The boss has started. Disengage is going to happen for both sides. Nothing gained, nothing lost here for the members of Team Freedom and Galeforce Esports.
But Team Freedom are the ones who are further ahead in experience, looking for that 13 spike for the next beacon phase. So it was on Galeforce Esports to make something happen, and I think we even saw them stall out for a little bit longer on the Zerg Rush, just waiting until they had all their members back so that they could get in and make sure that there wasn't a free boss, there wasn't something that Team Freedom did to immediately get all sorts of advantages while they were waiting for all the members to come back up. And Galeforce immediately ran out to look for that fight. They just didn't get any kills from it.
But, Gilly, for Galeforce, we're at the point of the game where we've got to start asking, what is the fight that they have to choose that they're going to reasonably remain on even footing? Because if they don't get it here pre-13, they were losing the laning phase before the Zerg Rush when they were on even footing. Now they're going to be down talent tiers. I just question, when does Galeforce recover, because the team fights haven't looked too pretty either.
That bait from Dansky, Fan not on board with taking that.
Usually when you put your direct counter in that
yeah,
lane, it's a bit too clear. It's a bit too clear. Usually it has to be like somebody who's like not famous for countering the other one. Like a Rhaegar might have been a little bit less telling here, Team Freedom.
Well, Galeforce don't fall for it, but Freedom are still maintaining the lead as the beacon's about to begin.
Zeratul did show himself on bottom, though, which means the members of Freedom, once they click on that 13, pick up the talents, they should be ready to go. Going to start. Muradin's already backdooring the bottom shrine.
Yeah, this is a waiting game for Galeforce Esports, limiting their losses until they feel confident that they can get a fair engage, as fair as they would like. Whether it's waiting until 13, whether it's just making sure that they have everything cleared out in the bottom lane so that they don't take any core pressure.
Galeforce here has got to be so careful. You just constantly see the members of Team Freedom kind of anchoring, keeping track of the scouting. They know every transition Galeforce is making. and they're still half a level away from that even talent tier. There are no major talents that I do see them picking up that makes me feel the outcome of this game is going to be any different than we've experienced so far. Is there anything that you see kind of indicating maybe that they could rely on?
Healing Static will help King Caffeine stay on the point better. That's
okay.
a good one. Maybe disengage range. Something more mobility in general will help Greymane in the fight, especially wanting to use Go for the Throat in the fight. The fight's coming to them, though.
Pre-13, they have gotten the one they want. Divine Shield Force onto Akaface alone. Cocoon was used. It's going to be revealed. Cure unable to get the drag thanks to the knockback of Mike Udall.
It was all just a clever ruse, though. All they wanted was the beacon.
It was a trap, Gale Force Esports. They haven't fallen for it yet. Cure grabs that top shrine. Zeratul has no way to move it in. Where's the Zeratul going to go? He's flanking downward. 13's here. Gale Force Esports wants a fight, and it's going to happen on the bottom altar. When does Dahaka come in? We are yet to find out. Brush Dock.
Stalking in. Fan goes in for the fight. Cure's very low, has to use Burrow and the Gust.
Gust is splitting the members. Ancestral lands onto Cure. Stage Dive goes in, but it doesn't have the impact they're looking for. Mike Udall is going to go down. Fan hits the Void onto 4. Drag lands onto him. Zugrug's the focus. Burrow charge in, and he's frozen.
He's frozen, but makes it out, continuing through after the fact. Cure is the one to go down. Finally falls, but everyone else from Gale Force Esports has sustained way too much damage because of the poison.
Zugrug throwing in the fadeaway there, priming Nasmus for a huge Thornwood find. Dotting up Gale Force Esports. They've got the Zerg Rush sieging away up on top. Fan goes in for the rebuttal, the Cocoon, and it costs him his life. There's no way he can make it out. That was Seeker in the dark. He didn't burn teleport, and he doesn't have his Vorpal anymore. I don't think he has a way out here. That's one. No way.
Impale. Poison.
Good night, my sweet prince. He did it. He's back.
Woo.
We're going to act like that was calculated.
Not close at all. But, by the way, whole time, Zerg Rush pushing for freedom takes out the final keep.
It does, and with that much catapult pressure into Gale Force Esports, now we've got to figure out what they're going to do about those darn minions with splash damage. Echo Pedal Stage Dive is the first thing. Zeratul sitting back and being that side soaker anymore, I feel like is absolutely out of options. They need him around sharking to try and find the Falstad or the Lunara moving around onto the map. And Gilly, I haven't brought it up yet to this point because I wanted to see how it unfolded, but Gale Force moving into a Zeratul and not letting him be the roamer is much like that Dragonshire situation where you put him as that solo representative up in the top lane, and he's just a placeholder. He's not a solo laner.
Yeah, he has been the soloer against Dahaka, which puts it in where Dahaka is going to win that, so then the 4v4 has to be good for Gale Force Esports, and so far it's been Team Freedom who has been ruining every single 4v4 because of Lunara damage.
And Gale Force is trying to force pre-16 to get it through this Void.
Stage Dive's going to jump on top of the Void now too, and he power slides immediately after, but look at the damage he takes in the process.
Mike goes down, K1 Pro so very low, Lunara drops on the side of Team Freedom, but they have won this fight absolutely. Nice slow here from the max range there, coming out from Dansky. Brush Dock in, one shrub to another, Cure's got it all.
Doesn't catch Fan with the drag, so he'll chase down Murden instead, but Uther still falls, and the rest of Team Freedom find a Zeratul as Cure comes back using the vent for the extra movement speed. You're like, oh, it's okay, Cure. We had it handled. Only Murden left for Gale Force Esports. We're going to have Greymane up in 7 seconds and ETC up in 4. There's no Lunara for this push, but there's still catapults to escort to the core dread.
15 seconds for the Gust to come back online. I don't think Gale Force can stop it, but that barrel roll use very early is going to leave King Caffeine the sign to move in. Pre-cleanse drops 60% on the core. Ancestral healing is there. It looks like that is enough. Team Freedom takes game 1 over Gale Force Esports on Braxis holdout of all maps to kick off this series.
Team Freedom had phenomenal rotations the entire time. It's like they knew exactly what was going to be happening, where Gale Force Esports was going to be. They had the strategy of Gale Force figured out to a T, even knowing where Zeratul was going to be, trying to bait him to go in for the fight. Granted, the bait didn't work, but having Zeratul be the solo laner against Dahaka, as I said, forced the 4v4 on the other side on the other beacon. Zeratul's not going to take the beacon from Dahaka, and the 4-man didn't do that versus the 4-man of Team Freedom either. It's like the adaptation, it was too late for Gale Force. They couldn't really change that up.
I feel like that was a lot of it did come down to the draft. I don't want to take away from Team Freedom. I feel like there was a lot of things that they had to do very, very right to make sure that a team like Gale Force Esports doesn't win on Braxis holdout, right? Like, that doesn't accidentally happen. But I do feel that at some point, Gale Force, they first picked ETC, and that was a side lane. At any case where you first pick a hero and it's a side lane that isn't going to win its lane matchup, it was into. Do you see what I'm saying here? That's your high priority. You just wasted literally the most valuable slot that you have in a draft. You just gave away because you're not giving it away, but you're putting it in a losing situation. And in no case should you look at that and say this is solid drafting. And so I'm not saying that I feel like I would have liked to see this different. I don't know what it was, but I know that ETC as a solo that high in prio just doesn't. It doesn't cut it.
Right, especially when he is supposed to be the global against the globals of Team Freedom. Team Freedom gets their globals from level 1. ETC doesn't get it until heroic abilities with stage dive. So then if Zeratul's the one who has to be against the Dahaka, ETC, yes, he has Crowd Surfer and can try to power slide in sneakily, and Muradin's doing the same, but Team Freedom had never had a problem with that with all the structural damage they just did by sitting in a lane, making sure they had a beacon, and taking down towers the old-fashioned way. Before we get into more strategy for the next map, let's take a look at the global progress of our cheers, because you guys did it. We've reached 20 million, and we've unlocked the Arcane Chaos Lizard.
Nothing can hold us back, boys. We have broken through the glass. Arcane Chaos Lizard's out. When will we just smash through the deadly Chaos Lizard later on?
Sounds like soon.
So actually,
soon.
Probably somebody out there has done the math on the average daily and projected estimated date of arrival. But you know what? I'm going to leave that for you guys and all the tryhards at home that wants to calculate that, because sadly, this guy up here, I'm too worried about Gale Force and Freedom.
Yep, and speaking of that, we talked a lot about ETC versus Dahaka in that match. So let's take a look at the stats of Cure versus Michael Udall. Immediately very close in takedowns and deaths between the two of these players. KDA slightly higher for Michael Udall, but it's nothing to sneeze at for Cure.
Cure is making it happen statistically across the board, even up to the 91% kill participation. The involvement that he has as a side laner is absolutely huge. And more importantly, you talked about it, both these guys coming from Dorm. Heroes of the Dorm champion versus Heroes of the Dorm champion. Looks like Cure's wearing it better right now.
So far, one game in to this best of 5, but it's Cure and Team Freedom who have defeated Gale Force on home turf Braxis holdout. Where do we go next?
I'm sorry, we even have the original Dorm fan Victor.
That's true.
We have all the Dorm champions that have played professionally in the series. That's a little weird to think about. It kind of, boom, light bulb came on, didn't hear a word you said. You can go back.